I'm joined by the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, John Gieve. Thank you very much for joining us today. It did seem to me that it was a little bit of a compromise on the deficit question. It seemed to encompass everybody. Is that the way we should take it?
Well, I think for many countries like the UK, we've got to take action on our deficit in order to protect our market standing. And globally, people are worried that if all the countries tighten their deficits at once too quickly, they'll knock the wind out of the recovery sails. Yeah. And that is, that's what they were addressing. That's why they talked about phasing. I think it's more an expression of hope than a plan. And in particular, there's no evidence yet that the surplus countries are going to do what the G-20 has asked of them, that is, expand their economies so their demand makes up for the reductions in demand in the deficit countries.
Now, if we look at the possibilities of a double-dip recession, which seemed to be what President Obama was warning against, to keep the fiscal stimulus in place, do you think that we are likely to see that?
No, I don't think we're likely to see it, but it's still a possibility. In particular, Europe is in for a poor period of growth, so we're very dependent on what's going on in the Far East and what's going on in the US. At the moment, there seems to be still a gathering strength in the US recovery, and there's still tremendous growth in the Far East. So I don't see a new dip in the immediate future, but there's still a chance of that happening next year.
Now, President Obama was also very keen on the idea that we'd raise significantly more capital, that banks would have to raise significantly more capital. That was agreed on, but again, a little bit of a fudge in that it can be phased in at various times for various banks.
Well, what they did at the G20 really was to reiterate their commitment to the process that's going on through the Basel Committee to strengthen the capital and liquidity requirements, transparency requirements. And really, they didn't go very much further than they have in previous meetings. They really reiterated that they are determined to reach conclusions by the end of this year for the national governments and to implement them by the end of 2012, and then to have a phased rollout. And
so is it Seoul, really, at the next G20 meeting, where we're going to hear more about the exact
I think that's right, because what's happening at the moment is that the Financial Stability Board is going through what it calls a calibration exercise. It's set out some principles, and now it's trying to put some numbers to them, which overall won't throttle the banking industry. And that process is going on now, and in the autumn we'll find out whether what they've come up with and whether it works.
Does the idea that if the banks had had more capital, that banking crisis would not, the financial crisis would not have taken hold in the way it did, does that make sense?
Well, there comes a point in a financial panic when no amount of capital is any good because no one's lending to anyone. And you could say that was true in September 2008. However, if banks had had to hold much more capital and liquidity, we would not have had the credit-fueled boom, especially in the US, but also in Europe, that we did have and which led to the crisis. So it's all about prevention, not about dealing with the crisis once it's on you.
John Gieve, thank you very much indeed.